Welcome back to Crafted Nest, a place where forgotten corners and simple objects are reborn into beauty. Today, we invite you to wander through gardens alive with blossoms, handmade designs, and rustic touches that anyone can create. Every project you'll see is more than decoration. It's a story of patience, love, and creativity, where the soil and sunlight work hand in hand. As you watch, let the colors inspire you. Let the details spark new ideas, and maybe you'll feel that gentle push to try something in your own space. We believe gardens are not built in a single day, but in moments, watering at dawn, trimming with care, saving seeds for tomorrow. These are the small rituals that turn a house into a sanctuary. If this resonates with you, we warmly invite you to subscribe to Crafted Nest. Your support helps us continue sharing ideas that celebrate simplicity and nature. Don't forget to like this video if it inspires you, and share your own garden dreams in the comments below. Together, let's keep growing beauty, one seed, one flower, one creation at a time. Have you ever woken up on a quiet morning and felt the urge to bring a touch of joy right outside your door? A simple wicker basket, once forgotten in storage, can be transformed into a living canvas of colors with rose moss, also known as portulaca. These flowers are humble, yet when they bloom together, they create a rainbow that feels like a gift from nature itself. In this small project, the beauty lies in its simplicity. You don't need fancy tools or expensive pots, just a sturdy basket, a handful of soil, and the tiny seeds or cuttings of rose moss. They thrive in sunlight, so find a corner where the morning light falls gently and let them soak in the warmth. Water lightly, not too much, because these flowers love to grow in tough conditions, almost teaching us how to flourish with less. Every morning, as the sun rises, the flowers open their petals like little lanterns greeting the day. And in the evening, they close again, resting like we do after a long day. Watching this rhythm teaches patience and appreciation for life's small cycles. Sometimes, a bee will hover near the blossoms, and children will stop to admire the cascade of colors. These small moments turn an ordinary veranda into a place of wonder. What makes this project special is how achievable it is. You can start today with a basket you already own. In just a few weeks, you'll see how life finds its way through soil and sunshine, spilling beauty from the edges of a simple container. And soon, you'll realize that it wasn't only the basket that bloomed, it was also your mornings, now colored with peace, joy, and a sense of renewal. There is something unforgettable about a garden full of zinnias in summer. Their blooms arrive like fireworks, one after another, each color brighter than the last, until the whole flower bed looks like a living festival. Unlike flowers that demand constant care, zinnias are generous, offering beauty simply for the price of sun and a little water. Imagine kneeling down on the soil early in the morning, when the air is cool and still. The petals glisten with tiny drops of dew, and butterflies are already circling, drawn to the brightness. It feels almost as though the garden itself is breathing slowly, inviting you to take in the peace it offers. Zinnias teach us that beauty doesn't have to be complicated. They thrive in full sunlight, and they reward us endlessly when we trim away the wilted blooms, allowing new ones to appear. One of the most delightful secrets about zinnias is how they multiply. Cut a stem and place it gently into moist soil, and soon new roots will form. Suddenly, your single flower bed grows into a little community, each stem standing tall, each blossom opening with joy. In a way, it mirrors our own lives. When we share what we have, beauty multiplies. Children love zinnias too. Their bold colors seem painted by hand, and they are sturdy enough to survive curious little fingers. When guests arrive, they often pause by the flower bed, struck by its brightness. The zinnias become more than flowers. They become memories stitched into summer days. To plant a zinnia bed is to invite joy into your daily routine. With each bloom, the garden feels alive, and every time you step outside, you are reminded that nature always knows how to celebrate life, even in the simplest patch of soil. There's a quiet charm in setting aside a small corner of the garden for balsam flowers. Unlike roses or lilies that demand attention, balsam blooms humbly, spreading soft colors that feel like whispers of joy. Their petals, often pink or purple, are translucent in the sunlight, glowing almost as if lit from within. When you pass by in the morning, they greet you silently, reminding you that even the simplest spaces can hold beauty. Creating a balsam bloom corner is effortless, and that is part of its magic. The seeds are tiny, yet once sprinkled into the soil, they sprout eagerly, asking only for a little water and sunlight. Soon, they rise with leafy stems, and before you realize it, the flowers appear in clusters, turning a plain patch of ground into a living canvas. Children love balsam for its playful secret, the seed pods that burst gently at a touch, scattering seeds like nature's surprise. It becomes not just a garden, but a memory-making place. Tending to balsam feels like caring for an old friend. They do not demand perfection. They grow even in corners where the soil is not rich, even in places where other flowers may hesitate. And in return, they offer blossoms that brighten the dullest afternoons. Sometimes, when the air is still, you may find butterflies resting on them, their wings folded delicately like paper. This is the essence of a DIY balsam bloom corner. It teaches us to notice the overlooked, to celebrate the small. With little effort, you create not only a garden feature but also a reminder. Beauty thrives quietly, often in the corners we least expect. And when you pause to admire it, you may find a piece of your own heart blooming there, too. There is something deeply poetic about walking beneath an arch draped in flowers. The moment you step into its shade, the garden transforms, not just a space of plants and soil, but a place of passage, like a doorway into a gentler world. Clematis montana, with its soft pink blossoms and delicate tendrils, is a perfect companion for such a rustic archway. Building the structure itself is simple. A wooden or metal frame, anchored firmly into the earth, becomes the stage for the vines to perform their quiet climb. At first, the stems seem fragile, twisting and searching for support. But give them time, and they weave themselves confidently, turning the arch into a living sculpture. Each spring, the blossoms open, and suddenly the ordinary backyard feels like a hidden retreat. What makes this project special is the patience it invites. Gardening is not about instant rewards, it is about watching growth unfold slowly. Day by day, the clematis stretches higher, leaves unfolding like tiny promises. And then, when the season arrives, the flowers appear in abundance, light, airy, and sweetly fragrant. Walking under them feels like being embraced by nature itself. This archway also teaches balance. Too much sun can dry the roots, so mulch and careful watering protect them. The vines need guidance at first, gently tied to the frame until they find their way. And as they grow, they give back tenfold. Not only beauty, but also shade, a sense of arrival, and a reminder that even the simplest wooden frame can be transformed into something magical with time and care. A rustic clematis montana archway does not just decorate a garden. It creates a place of pause, a moment of stillness, where one can breathe and feel the gentle hand of nature at work. There are mornings when the first rays of sunlight fall across the garden, and everything feels new again. The blossoms sparkle with dew, the soil smells fresh, and the day begins in gentle silence. Yet, in these tender hours, the flowers also need protection, especially in a countryside garden where playful pets and wandering feet can disturb them. A simple wooden fence, handmade and humble, becomes more than a barrier. It becomes a guardian of beauty. Crafting this fence doesn't require carpentry skills or polished tools. A few wooden stakes, Some rope or twine, and a little patience are enough. You press the stakes firmly into the ground, tie them together, and suddenly, a natural boundary forms. It doesn't block the view. Instead, it frames the flowers like a painting bordered by wood. The fence adds character, a rustic touch that feels both practical and poetic. As the morning glow washes over the garden, the flowers stand safe behind their wooden line. Dogs may wander nearby, curious noses pressed close, but the blossoms remain untouched. Children can play freely, and yet the delicate stems are shielded. And when you stand back to look, the fence itself becomes part of the scene, blending with soil, sun, and bloom, as though it was always meant to be there. This little project teaches us something about care. Protection doesn't need to be harsh or heavy. It can be light, almost invisible, yet still strong. The fence becomes a quiet promise that what is fragile will be allowed to grow, that mornings will always arrive with blossoms intact, and that beauty, when cared for, has the power to last through every season. There is a quiet joy in discovering that life can begin again from what might have been thrown away. A cut stem, fragile and forgotten, can grow roots if given just a little care. This is the heart of a handmade cut stem propagation station, a place where renewal happens in silence and where even the smallest pieces are given a chance to flourish. It doesn't require much: a few jars, some clear water, or a patch of moist soil. Place the stems gently inside, and within days, you'll notice tiny white roots forming like delicate threads. It feels almost miraculous, as if nature is whispering a secret. Growth is always possible. Watching these changes is not just gardening, it is a meditation, a reminder that patience brings reward. Children often marvel at this process, pressing their eyes close to the glass to see the roots appear. And for adults, it becomes a practice of mindfulness, checking the water, noticing the first sprouts, learning to care for something small but alive. Soon, the cuttings that once seemed fragile grow into strong plants, ready to be transferred back into the soil, where they will bloom again. What makes this project deeply meaningful is its simplicity. No expensive tools, no complicated steps, just the willingness to give a second chance. Every cutting that survives becomes a story of resilience, a reminder that beauty often begins in places we least expect. A propagation station is more than jars and stems. It is a corner of hope in the garden. Each new root is a promise of tomorrow's blossoms, each leaf a testament to nature's quiet determination. And in nurturing these small beginnings, we nurture a gentleness within ourselves too. In every garden, the soil is more than just dirt. It is the quiet foundation that holds the promise of life. And just like we cover ourselves with blankets on cold nights, the soil too needs its protection. This is where mulch, made from simple dried grass or straw, becomes a gentle guardian of the earth beneath our flowers. Laying mulch is a ritual as calming as it is practical. After trimming the lawn or gathering dried stalks, you scatter them carefully around the base of each plant. The golden strands blend into the soil, forming a soft blanket that holds moisture, shields roots from the sun, and keeps weeds from stealing space. It is a small act of kindness, but one that transforms the health of the entire garden. On hot afternoons, when the sun burns fiercely, the plants remain cool beneath their cover. During heavy rains, the mulch absorbs the first drops, preventing soil from washing away. Over time, the grass itself breaks down, slowly returning to the earth as nourishment. Nothing is wasted. What was once discarded becomes food for new growth. Standing back, you'll notice that the mulch also changes the garden's appearance. The soil looks tidy, the flowers framed against a rustic golden carpet. Children sometimes gather the dried grass in baskets, helping to spread it, turning the task into play. Even the act of bending down to lay the mulch feels grounding, reminding us that beauty comes not only from blossoms, but from care given quietly to what lies beneath. Eco-friendly mulch teaches us a lesson. Sustainability does not always require grand gestures. Sometimes, it is as simple as letting nature feed itself, as humble as covering the soil with yesterday's grass so that tomorrow's flowers may bloom brighter. When the rains arrive, they bring both blessings and challenges. The soil drinks deeply, the air turns fresh, and the flowers lift their faces to the cool sky. Yet, hidden in the constant dampness, problems begin to stir. Leaves turn yellow, spots spread across the surface, and suddenly, the joy of bloom is shadowed by disease. But even here, the garden teaches us resilience, because care during rainy days is as much about patience as it is about skill. Walking outside after a week of showers, you notice the zinnias looking weary. Their stems are long, but their leaves bear marks of struggle. Instead of despair, you take a pair of scissors and gently prune the sick parts, giving the plant a chance to heal. The cut leaves fall into a basket, their weight reminding you that even in loss, the garden prepares for renewal. Without harsh chemicals, simple steps protect the flowers, spacing them wide enough so air can move, removing diseased parts before the problem spreads, and letting the soil rest without drowning it in excess water. In these careful actions, the garden breathes again. There is something grounding about this work. Kneeling in damp soil, hands wet from both rain and dew, you learn to accept imperfection. No garden is flawless. Every plant carries its scars. Yet those scars do not take away the beauty. In fact, they add to it, teaching us that life thrives not in the absence of struggle, but in the presence of care. As the rain softens into mist, the garden feels alive once more. The flowers, though touched by disease, stand tall, their resilience glowing quietly in the gray light. And you, too, feel renewed, reminded that healing is often found in the simplest acts of tending with love. In the heart of a garden, even a small pond can feel like a window into another world. Water has a way of calming the spirit, reflecting both the sky above and the life that gathers around it. And when water hyacinths begin to bloom, the surface transforms into a living canvas, purple flowers rising gracefully above the water, leaves floating like gentle rafts. Creating a mini pond doesn't require a grand estate or heavy tools. A simple basin, a large clay pot, or even a lined patch of soil can hold the water. Place a few stones around the edge, add fresh water, and then set the hyacinths free. They spread quickly, sending roots into the water, each plant becoming part of a larger floating family. Within weeks, the pond breathes with color and movement. What makes this project enchanting is not only the flowers themselves, but the life they invite. Frogs may settle on the stones, dragonflies will skim across the surface, and birds will pause for a drink. The garden, once silent, becomes alive with subtle sounds, the drip of water, the buzz of wings, the croak of a frog in the afternoon shade. The hyacinths also remind us of balance. They thrive easily, sometimes too quickly, teaching the gardener to trim and share, to keep the pond open and breathing. Their beauty is abundant, yet it asks us to care responsibly. Sitting beside a mini pond in the cool of the evening, watching the blossoms reflect the last rays of sun, feels like a gift. In such a simple project, you create not only decoration but also a sanctuary, a place where water, flower, and light come together to quiet the heart. There is a quiet satisfaction in knowing that today's blossoms will give birth to tomorrow's garden. As the season draws to a close, zinnias and portulacas begin to wither, their vibrant petals fading. Yet within those fading blooms lies a treasure, seeds, small and unassuming, carrying the promise of color for the year to come. Saving seeds is one of the most timeless acts of gardening. On a sunny afternoon, you walk among the flower beds, gently plucking dried flower heads and tiny pods. With a little care, the seeds fall into your palm like grains of hope. You spread them on a tray to dry, listening to the soft sound they make as they scatter. It feels almost ceremonial, as though you are gathering stories told by each plant throughout the summer. Once dried, the seeds are tucked into small paper envelopes, labeled with names and dates. These little packets become treasures stored away in drawers or jars, waiting for the day when spring returns. When the soil warms again, you'll scatter them into the earth, and the cycle will begin anew. Flowers that once brightened your mornings will rise again, reminding you that nothing in the garden is ever truly lost. This practice is more than frugality, it is connection. Each seed saved links one season to the next, each bloom to another generation. It is a way of remembering that gardens are not built in a single year, but in rhythms of planting, blooming, resting, and returning. To save seeds is to embrace patience. It is a promise you make with your garden, that every ending carries within it the shape of a beginning, and that beauty always finds a way to return. There are moments in autumn when the garden feels like a poem. The air cools, the light softens, and the flowers bloom with colors richer than any season before. A simple pathway, lined with blossoms, becomes more than a trail. It becomes a journey into beauty itself. Walking along such a path is like stepping into a dream, where every petal whispers a welcome. To create an autumn flower pathway is to embrace warmth and intimacy. Stones or bricks can mark the walkway, but it is the flowers that give it life. Zinnias with their bold hues, marigolds glowing like embers, and balsams shimmering with pinks and purples, all together frame the trail with nature's artistry. As the leaves begin to fall, they scatter across the path, mixing with petals, creating a tapestry of color underfoot. What makes this pathway enchanting is not perfection, but atmosphere. The garden doesn't need to be grand. Even a narrow strip becomes magical when lined with blooms. Children run along it, chasing butterflies, while adults slow their pace, savoring the moment. Each step feels lighter, as though the flowers themselves are carrying you forward. In the quiet of evening, lanterns or candles can be placed along the way, and suddenly the path transforms again. No longer just a walkway, but a romantic retreat where time seems to pause. The fragrance of flowers lingers in the cool air, and the sound of crickets rises softly from the grass. This pathway reminds us that beauty is not only about what we see, but also about how we move through it. To walk an autumn flower path is to be reminded that life, like the garden, is best experienced slowly, step by step, surrounded by colors that fade but always return. Mornings in the countryside carry a rhythm all their own. The world awakens slowly, with the soft call of birds and the hum of insects rising with the sun. In this gentle hour, the garden is at its purest. Dew clings to every leaf, the soil is cool and fragrant, and the flowers stretch their faces toward the new light. Tending the garden at dawn becomes more than a task. It becomes a ritual, a quiet conversation with nature. With a wooden basket in hand, you step barefoot onto the grass, feeling its dampness against your skin. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of earth and blossoms mixed together. You kneel by the zinnias, trimming a wilted stem, and already a butterfly hovers nearby, as if to thank you. Water flows lightly from the can, sparkling in the sun as it falls, soaking the roots that waited all night. Each act is small, yet it feels sacred, like offering a blessing. What makes this ritual extraordinary is not the work itself, but the way it transforms you. In the stillness of morning, worries seem smaller. The sound of city noise is replaced with the chorus of crickets and the distant crow of a rooster. The body bends, the hands soil themselves, and the heart becomes calm. Gardening at this hour teaches presence, the art of noticing details too often overlooked, the curve of a leaf, the shimmer of dew, the fragile strength of a new bud. By the time the sun rises higher, the garden glows with renewed life, and so do you. The ritual is complete, not with a grand flourish, but with the quiet joy of knowing that each morning begins with gratitude, rooted in the soil of your own care. Life in the countryside often means sharing your space with more than just flowers. Dogs, with their boundless energy and loyal presence, bring joy to the garden, but also challenges. Their curious paws and playful leaps can flatten delicate blossoms in seconds. Yet with a little creativity, the garden can belong to both blooms and beloved pets. Imagine a morning where your dogs run freely across the grass, chasing each other in happy circles, while your zinnias and balsams stand tall behind a simple handmade fence. The solution is not to keep them apart, but to design a space where harmony is possible. Wooden stakes tied with rope, bamboo arranged in neat rows, or even recycled pallets can form low boundaries that gently remind pets where not to tread. These rustic barriers are not heavy or harsh. They blend naturally with the garden, adding character while serving their quiet purpose. Sometimes, even a row of stones or potted plants along the edges is enough to guide the dogs away. And in this balance, both garden and animals thrive. What makes these hacks meaningful is the sense of inclusion. Instead of frustration, you find joy in watching your pets explore the safe spaces created for them, while your flowers bloom undisturbed. The garden becomes not only a sanctuary of blossoms, but also a playground of laughter and life. At the end of the day, as the dogs rest in the shade and the flowers sway gently in the breeze, you realize that a dog-friendly garden is more than design. It is love translated into space, where every living thing finds room to grow, run, and bloom together. Every garden has a heart, a focal point where eyes are drawn and moments linger. A rustic rose arch can become that heart, an invitation to step into beauty, framed by blooms that spill like soft cascades of color. When roses climb and weave themselves around a handmade wooden frame, the garden transforms, not into something grand, but into something timeless. Building the arch is a project of both strength and patience. 2 sturdy wooden posts, a curved beam, and a few nails are all it takes to create the skeleton. At first, the frame stands plain, a silent promise of what's to come. Then, season by season, the roses find their way upward, each tendril reaching higher, until the arch is no longer wood but blossom. On summer mornings, the scent of roses drifts through the air as you pass beneath. The petals, painted in shades of red, pink, or white, open wide to greet the sun. Bees hum gently among the blossoms, and every breeze carries fragrance across the path. Children run under it, their laughter echoing, while guests pause, taking in the beauty of something both simple and extraordinary. What makes a rose arch special is not perfection, but persistence. Roses require care, trimming, guiding, protecting from pests. Yet in return, they gift the garden with romance and grace. Even as petals fall, they scatter along the pathway like confetti, turning every step into a quiet celebration. This rustic DIY project reminds us that beauty often grows slowly, rewarding those who tend patiently. And when the roses finally climb high enough to meet at the arch's peak, the moment feels like a promise fulfilled, a garden that welcomes not only the body, but also the soul. There's a certain charm in looking out from a balcony and seeing blossoms spill over the railing. A flower box, especially when made of rustic wood, turns a simple ledge into a stage where colors dance and life softens the edges of daily routine. In a countryside home, this small detail makes the balcony not just a place to stand, but a place to linger. Creating a vintage-style flower box is as simple as repurposing old wood. Weathered planks, once part of a crate or shelf, can be shaped into a box that carries the beauty of time in its faded grain. When filled with soil and planted with bright blooms, petunias, geraniums, or even zinnias, the box becomes a burst of color against the muted tones of wood. Painted white or left bare, it holds a charm that feels both humble and timeless. Each morning, as you open the balcony door, the sight of flowers leaning outward to greet the sun becomes a ritual of joy. The petals shift with the breeze, and bees sometimes visit, drawn even to this small elevated garden. Watering becomes an act of mindfulness, each drop nourishing not only the plants, but also your own spirit. What makes these flower boxes special is their intimacy. Unlike a large garden, they are close at hand, just an arm's reach away, where you can touch the petals, smell the blossoms, and watch their colors change with the seasons. They remind you that even in small spaces, beauty can be cultivated, and that the simplest gestures, planting, watering, caring, can transform an ordinary balcony into a place of wonder. A vintage flower box is not just decoration. It is a way of bringing the garden closer so that every sunrise finds you already surrounded by blossoms. Sometimes the most striking garden features come from the simplest materials. A handful of clay pots, stacked one upon another, can become a tower of blooms, a sculpture of soil and color that feels both rustic and elegant. It is a project that requires little more than imagination, yet the result stands tall, drawing the eye upward like a living totem of flowers. The process is playful, almost like stacking building blocks. You start with the largest pot at the base, fill it with soil, then thread a sturdy rod or pole through its center for balance. Smaller pots are added one by one, each tilted slightly, each filled with a different burst of color. Soon, the tower leans with intention, blossoms spilling from every angle as though reaching for the light. What makes the clay pot tower enchanting is the variety it holds. Bright zinnias on one tier, trailing portulaca on another, maybe even herbs tucked in between. Each level tells its own story, yet together they form a harmony of green and bloom. The terracotta itself, with its earthy tones, blends seamlessly into the garden, grounding the playful structure in nature's palette. Children marvel at the way it stands, as though the pots defy gravity, and guests pause to admire its creativity. But beyond its beauty, the tower teaches a quiet lesson that design need not be expensive to be inspiring. With a few pots and a steady hand, you can create something unique, a vertical garden that breathes new life into old clay. When evening falls and the shadows stretch, the flower tower glows softly in the fading light, a testament to what simple hands can shape. It is a reminder that beauty often comes not from perfection, but from the courage to stack, to plant, and to let things grow. In the gentle stillness of a garden, water brings a new kind of life. A small pond, no larger than a shallow basin surrounded by stones, can become a sanctuary not only for plants, but for creatures too. Frogs, with their curious eyes and soft croaks, soon find their way, turning the corner of the garden into a lively stage of nature's play. Building a frog habitat begins simply. Gather stones to edge the pond, plant water-loving greens like hyacinths or reeds, and let the water settle. What feels like an ordinary corner becomes a world of its own. At dusk, the frogs arrive, resting quietly on the rocks or floating gently on the surface. Their voices rise in chorus, blending with the crickets and creating a soundtrack that feels timeless. The beauty of this project is not only in what you see, but in what you hear and feel. The pond becomes alive with movement. Dragonflies darting above, frogs leaping into the water, ripples spreading like tiny circles of calm. Even children stop to watch, enchanted by the sudden splash of a frog disappearing beneath the surface. This eco-friendly design also brings balance. Frogs act as natural guardians, keeping insect populations in check, reminding us that every creature has its role. By welcoming them, the garden becomes more than decoration. It becomes a shared habitat, a place where life thrives together. As night falls, the pond reflects the stars, and the frogs continue their quiet symphony. Sitting nearby, you realize that in creating a space for them, you've also created a refuge for yourself, a corner where nature's presence feels close, soothing, and complete. There is a kind of beauty that asks for no arrangement, no strict design, just freedom. A patch of wildflowers, kissed by the sun, embodies this beauty. Unlike rows of carefully planted blooms, these flowers rise where they will, creating a tapestry of colors that feels spontaneous, alive, and deeply honest. To begin such a meadow, you need only scatter seeds across an open patch of soil. The wind, the rain, and the sun will decide the rest. Soon, greens begin to sprout, and then blossoms appear, yellow daisies leaning toward the sky, purple asters nestled among tall grasses, and tiny white blooms filling the spaces in between. Together, they form a living mosaic that changes each week, as if the garden paints itself anew. Walking through this patch in the morning is like stepping into another rhythm of life. Bees drift lazily from one flower to the next, butterflies hover in quiet arcs, and the air hums with the sound of wings. The warmth of the sun makes every color sharper, every detail clearer. You pause, not to admire perfection, but to marvel at nature's playful abundance. What makes a wildflower meadow special is its humility. It doesn't demand care beyond the basics, occasional watering in dry spells, a trim when grasses grow too tall. Yet it gives back endlessly, offering food for pollinators, beauty for the eyes, and peace for the spirit. In its simple chaos, the meadow teaches us that not everything needs control to be beautiful. Sometimes, letting go creates the most breathtaking scenes. The sun touches the blossoms, the wind stirs the grasses, and for a moment, the world feels both wild and tender at once. As evening falls, the garden shifts from brightness to mystery. The flowers that glowed under the sun now rest in softer tones, and the air cools with a hint of night. Along the pathway, tiny flames begin to appear, candles flickering within handmade lanterns. Their light is warm, golden, and inviting, turning a simple walk into something almost magical. Creating a lantern path requires little more than imagination. Old mason jars, recycled glass bottles, or even tin cans can become lanterns with a few careful touches. A candle inside, protected from the breeze, is enough to send out a steady glow. Place them along the edges of a garden path, spacing them evenly, and watch as the trail comes alive when night arrives. The beauty of these lanterns is not in perfection, but in presence. Their light dances on the petals of zinnias and balsams, casting gentle shadows across the stones. Guests walking through the garden slow their steps, caught by the softness of the glow. Children hold their breath as though they've entered a secret fairy tale, where the path itself seems to guide their way. In practical ways, the lanterns illuminate without harshness, offering safety along the trail. But more than that, they create atmosphere, an intimacy that cannot be bought. Sitting nearby, you hear the crickets sing while the candles flicker, and the night feels tender, not dark. This DIY project reminds us that light, even in its smallest form, changes everything. A candle in a jar becomes more than decoration. It becomes memory. Each flame, glowing beside a flower, is like a heartbeat of the garden, steady, gentle, and full of quiet wonder. Every garden needs a place not only for flowers to bloom, but for people to rest. A rustic wooden bench, tucked into a corner and surrounded by blossoms, becomes more than furniture. It becomes a sanctuary. Weathered by time, its grain holds the marks of seasons past, while the flowers around it soften its edges, weaving color into its presence. Placing the bench is an act of intention. Beneath the shade of a tree or beside a flower bed, it becomes an invitation to pause, to breathe, to simply be. Zinnias sway in the breeze on one side, balsams brighten the soil on the other, and together they frame the seat with nature's artistry. In the morning, the bench is kissed by soft sunlight. In the evening, it glows in the amber hue of dusk. Sitting here, the world slows down. The hum of bees drifts lazily across the garden, birds perch nearby, and the fragrance of blossoms fills the air. Children may climb up, swinging their legs, while elders rest their backs, letting time pass in quiet comfort. The bench becomes part of life's rhythm, a witness to conversations, to silences, to moments when words aren't needed at all. This nook is not about perfection. It is about belonging. The wood may be uneven, the flowers may grow wild, but together they create harmony. The garden whispers more gently here, reminding us that beauty is found in rest as much as in growth. To build a rustic bench flower nook is to create space not only for plants but for the soul. A place where petals fall freely, sunlight lingers longer, and where every pause feels like a gift.